Theseus and the Minotaur. Theseus was the son of Zeus, the king of Athens, but the story says that his real father was Poseidon, god of the sea. When Theseus was still a baby, his father left him with his mother in their country house, so that he could grow up safely. This was at Troezen in the east of Greece, about 100 miles south of Athens, which was a very long journey in those days. Before he returned to Athens, Zeus placed a sword beneath a huge, heavy stone. "When my son is strong enough to lift that stone and take out the sword," he said, "send him to me in Athens, to take his place there at my court." Zeus went away and Theseus grew up in the country. Each year he went to the stone to see if he could lift it. Although Theseus tried hard, it was nearly 20 years before he could lift the stone and take out the sword. At last he succeeded and, saying goodbye to his mother, he set off alone for Athens. The journey was long and dangerous. He met many robbers and fought and killed them, before he reached his father. Theseus found his father worried and sad. "Why should the king of such a great city as Athens be sad?" he asked. Zeus explained. "Across the southern sea," he said, "there lies an island called Crete. Its king, whose name is Minos, rules over all Greece. His navy is the strongest in the world, and all our cities have to pay him for their safety." Zeus' head was bowed as he told Theseus the story. "Every year a Cretan ship comes to Athens and takes away to Crete 7 of our young men and 7 of our most lovely girls. We never see them again. They say that in King Minos' palace there is a great maze called the Labyrinth. In this lives a dreadful beast called the Minotaur. He is half man, half bull, and he lives on human flesh. Our girls and young men are sacrificed to him. Tomorrow the Cretan ship will arrive again. This is why I'm so sad." "Father," said Theseus, "let me help the city. We'll go to Crete as one of the 7 young men, and we'll kill this Minotaur." Zeus looked up in horror. No one had ever returned from the labyrinth where the Minotaur waited. Zeus clasped his son to him. "No," he cried. "You care not go. If lost my son should die. Let me hide you away in the palace until the Cretan ship has gone." Theseus smiled and spoke gently to his father. "Must go," he said. "It is not right that our young men and girls should die like this to please the cruel Minos. We'll kill the Minotaur, and return in a ship with a white sail so that you will know the good news more quickly. If should fail and die, we'll arrange for the news to be brought to you in a ship, with a black sail. But do not be afraid. The gods will help me." Zeus wept, but he allowed Theseus to go. So when the Cretan ship came to take away 7 young men and 7 girls as its victims, Theseus was among them, and he was taken away to Crete. 10 At last the ship came to the island of Crete and the prisoners were taken to King Minos' palace at Knossos. Hearing that the son of the king of Athens was among them, Minos ordered the prisoners to be brought before him. He had heard of Theseus and of his courage, and he wanted to see him. There were few young men who would brave the Minotaur. He spoke to the hero with cruel pleasure, enjoying the thought that Theseus was to die. 12 You are a brave man, he said, but a fool. Even if you are a king's son, the Minotaur will kill you, or you will be lost in the labyrinth. Theseus replied boldly, "You are not fit to be a king. But warn you that your end is coming. With the gods' help shall kill the Minotaur and destroy your palace." Minos laughed loudly and dismissed the prisoners, but his daughter, Ariadne, who had been watching, did not laugh. She found herself thinking of this brave and handsome man who had defied her father. She made up her mind to help him. She gazed after the prisoners as the guards led them away, and wondered what she could do. No one had ever escaped from the Minotaur before, but there must be a way. Then she had an idea. Theseus and his friends were taken to the part of the palace called the labyrinth. This was a maze of passages so dark and twisting that anyone who wandered into it could never find his way out again. Somewhere in the darkness lurked the terrible Minotaur, waiting to devour them. Ariadne followed at a distance, then slipped quietly up to Theseus. Before the guards could see, she whispered, "I am your friend. Here are 2 gifts you will need." She pushed 2 objects into Theseus' hands and slid away. When the guards had left the prisoners in the darkness, Theseus looked at the gifts that Ariadne had given him. One was a sword and the other was a ball of wool. 17 Theseus knew at once what he must do. "Stay here," he ordered the others, "and keep hold of one end of this strand of wool. One will take the other and make my way into the labyrinth to find the Minotaur." With the thin lifeline of wool in his hand, he set off to face the terror of the labyrinth. Behind him, the others waited fearfully. Would he succeed? One girl was crying. Her friends comforted her. "Have no fear, Theseus will save us," they said, although they too were frightened. Theseus moved cautiously forward, slow, letting the wool out behind him. He groped his way along the many passages, which seemed to twist and turn in every direction. It grew ever darker as he went further into the labyrinth, and the ball of wool grew smaller. 18 Theseus knew that the Minotaur could appear from behind a pillar at any moment. He must be ready to fight it. He stopped and listened. There was not a sound. He felt bewildered and lost. Was the Minotaur? Did it know he was in the labyrinth? Theseus drew his sword. Arne tried to see through the darkness. As he remembered all the stories told about the Minotaur, he began to grow frightened. 20 Only the thin strand of wool saved him from panic. Even this was running out. It was not long before he felt the end of the wool between his fingers. He turned and began to rewind it. Suddenly, from behind him, he heard a terrible snarl which made his blood run cold. He swung round to see where it came from, his sword gripped tightly in his hand. He was ready to battle with the monster. 21 There was a faint light and he could just see the outline of the Minotaur, like a huge man with the head of a bull. The beast charged and seized Theseus by the throat. But the hero was ready, and after a tremendous struggle, he plunged his sword into the Minotaur's side. With a fearful bellow, the creature fell dead. It would trouble the world no more. Now Theseus had to find his way back through the maze. Although it was still dark, he was no longer afraid. The Minotaur was dead, and all he had to do was follow the wool back to where his friends awaited. They rejoiced to see him, and asked many questions about the Minotaur. Then Theseus and his friends overpowered the surprised guards and fought their way out of the palace, setting parts of it on fire as they went. Ariadne went with them. The palace of King Minos of Knossos was burning, and the king's cruel reign was at an end. No longer would the sacrifice of 7 youths and 7 maidens be demanded from the king of Athens every year, for the Minotaur was dead. Theseus was sailing back to his home in triumph. On the way back to Athens, the vessel stopped at the port of Naxos. The youths and maidens, together with Theseus and Ariadne, landed to look at the beautiful island. Ariadne strayed apart and fell asleep. Theseus had grown tired of her, so he summoned his companions and they sailed on, leaving her alone on the island. 25 The gods punished Theseus for his base action by making him forget to change the sail on his ship to a white one, as he had promised his father to do. Back in Greece, Zeus was waiting for his son's return. Every day he would sit on a high cliff overlooking the southern sea, and watch for a ship sailing in from Crete. At last he saw a speck on the horizon. Slowly it turned into the shape of a Cretan ship. Theseus cried out in grief, for the sail that billowed above the painted hull was black. His son must be dead. Running forward, he hurled himself over the cliff and fell to his death in the sea. Unaware of this, Theseus sailed triumphantly into the harbor of Athens. Soon he became king, but he could never forgive himself for causing his father's death.